Welcome to How Doctors Heal, a podcast about healing, resilience, and the body's remarkable capacity to move toward balance. Together, we bring the perspectives of a physician, a naturopathic doctor, and a health educator, all living with chronic illness, as we explore what it means to care for the whole person and support healing from the inside out, no matter the diagnosis or health challenge. Through honest conversations, science-informed insights, and practical tools, we invite patients, caregivers, and clinicians to return to a deeper understanding of healing, one rooted in listening to the body, honoring our humanity, and creating the conditions in which healing can unfold. This is How Doctors Heal. Let's listen in on this week's conversation. Welcome to How Doctors Heal, a roundtable conversation with Dr. Susan Peyrovi and Dr. Terry Jacklin and myself, Katie Sloan. Last time, we talked about the different types of medicine that we can access for our care. And we hope through that discussion that you were able to better understand the different types of medical care and the benefits of each. We're curious, did you gain appreciation for the care you currently have? And did you find opportunities to add seats to the table for your care team? Today, we're going to dive into the ingredients for healing. And as we talk about these different ingredients, we'd love for you to listen with intention and listen for what resonates with you. Be thinking, what ingredients should make it onto my personal recipe care card for healing? And so, as we go, each of us is going to share our unique perspectives about what ingredients make it onto our card. So let's dive right in. Terry, let's hear from you first. How does someone figure out what goes on to their personal recipe card for healing?
Boy, these are great questions that you always put to us. And I think the first thing to realize, and once again, remember, I'm that old bird that's been living with MS for 40 years. So I might be a little, less wishy-washy, but you got to think that something that you've been doing hasn't been working for you, right? And so what makes it onto the card might actually be, what do we take off the card that we've got right now, right? So things for me are food, top of the stack, sunlight, nature, and anything that fuels us. So for me, those are all forms of fuel, right? Food, sunlight, nature, they fuel my soul. So those are definitely on my recipe card. They're definitely ingredients.
Thank you. Susan, how about you?
Yeah, I would say, gosh, first, just the awareness of your situation is so key. Stopping and assessing your situation. What's working? What's not working? What do I need more of? What do I need to let go of? I think that's a good place to start understanding how your environment might need to shift so that you can cause a shift in the body in the direction you want it to shift. And, I think so many of us, especially women, are so good at suppressing symptoms, being comfortable with discomfort. We as doctors learn to suppress all, physiologic urges like going to the bathroom, eating, drinking, because you got to just keep going. You would be weak if you didn't, or, if you took time for yourself, because training is grueling. But I'm trying to train that out of myself still. I am trying to tune in more often and to listen for what my body's trying to communicate to me. And as I add new things, I'm again starting to listen for shifts that are small. So assessing your situation, figuring out what you need more of and what you can let go of, I think would be a great starting point.
Can I just add something quickly, KT and Susan there? Just based on what you were saying, Susan, about how we're sort of trained to believe things. I think especially in women, pushing through, like I literally hear those words, I just push through, I just power through. That needs to come off the card too. So stopping, breathing, on the card.
Love that.
Acknowledging that you're pushing through. Sometimes we do it so automatically we don't even know we're doing it.
Exactly. Yeah,
Right, right. And I
absolutely.
love that both of you mention, putting things on the card, but also taking things off. It's so easy to learn more and add more and add more. And that is where that overwhelm comes from. And I think when I reflect on the last 10 years of this kind of healing journey I've been on, some of the biggest shifts have happened by actually taking something off the card, realizing that something didn't work for me, whether it was a lifestyle strategy or even a relationship, and so really learning to listen to my body, that was so difficult. I was one of those people that just had blinders on and just kept going and pushing through, like you mentioned, Terry. And I think like learning to really listen, like, how did that interaction with that person make me feel? How did that food make me feel? Right? How did that really intense exercise when it was 85 degrees make me feel? And really start thinking about these triggers and these symptoms as gifts and indicators of change being necessary. So let's talk about participation and what that means in terms of what it takes to kind of change our environment. What is our role in making those shifts?
Once again, here comes the grouchy old lady. This is from experience. Let me tell you, I've tried every approach. Life is not a spectator sport. Life is short, and we got to be all in. And it doesn't mean we get whiny and sucky and, oh, this sucks or that sucks. I hate hearing that word when it's associated with a Facebook group or something. Life is a spectator sport. There's ebbs and flows to it. We've got to get out of the bleachers. So stop collecting information and actually start rearranging your schedule so that you put you first and then everything else around it. And once again, just stopping and knowing that that's okay, because we live in a culture that measures and rewards itself based on what we do. And there's no value at all seen in the non doing, except the non doing is where the body can realign itself, rejuvenate itself, and actually do some healing. So, did I kind of go off on a tangent there, KT, or did I answer your
No, I think
No.
that's perfect, but I would also reframe that. To me, that sounded like advice from a wise owl.
Ah, there
Thank
you
you for
go.
that. Susan, what about you?
Yeah, it takes our active participation to shift our environment.
Mhm.
Nobody can do it for you. Like I make food for my kids and I put it in front of them, but if they don't want to eat it, I cannot force it into them. So the people make their own decisions. Maybe I can force feed them once or twice, but not for too long. And so this realization that we have to participate in our life to improve our health is really key. And no one else can do it for you. I love my patients, and some of them, I wish I could go to their house and do it for them. But of course, that's not how it works. People have to find their why for why they want to make these changes. And sometimes that starts with the assessment. And once you've got even a simple plan, go out there and act on it. Participate in your care.
Beautiful, beautiful. I see myself as really fortunate once I started connecting the dots of my past. I was actually educationally trained in natural resource management and environmental education. And I think when I started thinking about my life as an actual environment and a landscape, and I took ownership of being the steward for that environment, and I started paying attention to the environmental wellness, in my body, on my body, around me. I think that's what really like shifted me into action, taking action toward making these changes and shifts that really resulted in significant healing. And, that took like again, learning how to feel my way through the environment and honoring that inner messaging system that we talk about a lot, right? That inner wisdom as a trusted guide. And that's one of the beautiful things about getting older is that wisdom in us just grows and grows. I also wanted to mention that, that didn't happen for me overnight. That was a really long process. And I ended up needing a lot of biofeedback tools to help me learn to listen to my body. So if you're not hearing the messages your body is sending right now, like that might be something to explore because it certainly helped me to better listen to what my body was trying to tell me. And, ignored it for a long time and it just screamed louder and louder. And, being able to just push pause and listen and interpret those messages really helped me kind of delineate and choose between those yeses and those nos.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a really beautiful description, Katie. I love that. Like you always have these really wise ways of expressing yourself. So thinking about your inner environment, what's in you, around you, I think is a really good image that I'm going to remember.
Oh, good. Yeah. Before then I just felt lost. I didn't know. And I didn't actually know what was working or not working because I wasn't paying attention. So let's shift and talk about personal values because this is something we've all talked about quite a lot, how our personal values really impact our healing. Who wants to start?
I can start. I think of values as really like the birthplace of a lot of behaviors and decisions that we make throughout our day, throughout our lifetime. So your values would be like your core beliefs, your principles, the things that um the things that guide your behaviors and decisions, right? And if you think about it, your values have a huge influence on your behaviors and your goals. So,
Mm.
if being healthy is not a value for you, it's going to be really hard to get into a regular exercise regimen, for example, because it's not a value for you. And by the way, I always say, our lifestyles and behaviors are morally neutral. You're not a bad person if you don't exercise every day. It just means you don't exercise every day. And maybe that's because health is not a core value for you. So I love doing exercises with my patients where we actually identify our values and we narrow them down. Like, what are the most important top 3 to 5 guiding principles, right? And if you understand that, then it becomes easier to figure out why you're having trouble achieving a behavior. Right. So if your goals and behaviors are not in line with your values, it's very hard to achieve them. So, for me, my value is to live a big life of adventure and creation and creativity. And I know that in order to be able to do that, I need to take care of myself. I need to sleep. I need to eat at a regular time. I need to rest a lot throughout the day so that I can go and drive and pick up my kids and not have to pull over on the side of the road and nap. I've done that so many times. I'd rather just nap at home so I don't have to do it in public, right? So, it took some time for me to figure out like, who am I? What's important to me? And what do I need to do to get there? And after my diagnosis, I actually developed some new values. Things shifted. New things became important, and some other things that were important before no longer held importance in my life. So I'm curious, Terry, do you have a life experience to demonstrate the importance of values?
Ah, So you probably see me sitting here squirming the whole time because I struggle with this one because I have always been a people pleaser. I've always been a put everybody before me kind of person. And and that doesn't serve you when your job is caring for other people because you all of a sudden become at the back of the pack. And that is my challenge. So I go through ebbs and flows through my life where I get it together and I do great. and then the focus or my values get diluted in what I'm doing, and I do not so great. So I think for me the biggest thing is having that constant gentle and loving recognition of when I am. And it gets better. You know, once you get to your 60s, you kind of get it, right? But understand, recognizing and be gentle and compassionate and say, okay, slipped again. And I can tell you honestly that I do the best when I've got my values and my guiding principles in line, and I do a schedule to support this. And I've got one on the wall right here. And I had one, I remember, in second year naturopathic school. And let me tell you, there was nothing naturopathic about the hours that we put in at naturopathic school. And the second year was called divorce year because it was so intense. And we wrote our first set of board exams after it. And I was determined, I was newlywed, so I was determined not to get divorced. And so I had everything that was important to me was right there. And I had a schedule, and I did not stray from that schedule. And not only did I include everything that was important to me in my life, I aced my board exams like nobody's business. You know what I mean? So it's just having that focus on what is important to you. And that's sort of through my foggy lens, what it looks like.
I love your foggy lens. And I hope I didn't come off as being like, I do these things perfectly. Oh my gosh, nowhere near
Oh,
perfect. In
no.
fact, I've given like permission to my friends and even patients who message me and they're like, are you keeping up with your exercise schedule? Because it's hard for all of us. It doesn't mean that it's not worth doing, but
Yeah,
it's a work in progress. How about you,
absolutely.
Katie?
Yeah, this always makes me think back to when I was training and coaching teachers, and we did a lot of values-based leadership development because we really believed that teaching is a form of leadership. And I never knew at the time how much that type of programming would help me as a patient to kind of like turn the lens on myself and realize that, my lived values are visible now to people who know me. Like they can actually tell by looking at my schedule, by seeing how I use my time, by seeing how I choose to communicate, who I choose to communicate with, right? And for a long time, I didn't have that kind of clarity and I was all over the place. And I think that leads to a place of overwhelm, especially when, you arrive upon a diagnosis of a serious health condition and you don't know where to turn. And so really like honing in on those values. And one of the things we've talked about before is like, I have a major value of being outdoors. And that was something that was limited for me for many years because of my diagnosis. Right. And once I realized, oh my gosh, this is such a top value, and started really moving the needle in that area to make those things possible for me again, things really shifted in my overall health and wellness. Like if we are denying ourselves of our values, then we're not going to feel well, right? We're not going to experience joy and those positive emotions. And I think it's just such a slippery slope if we aren't, really holding true to those values. So now I'm really proud of the fact that people can, see what my values are. And if I look at my calendar and there's not things that I love on there, like that's a problem. And, I also kind of fall off the wayside sometimes when life happens, right? And other priorities start to take place over my values. But that's why like constantly recalibrating to those top values is a really important guidance tool for me. And
You just said two super powerful words there, constantly recalibrating.
yeah, right. This isn't a
Awesome.
one and done. This is a way of living. And if I get too far off, which I do in both directions, like just kind of getting myself back to those things that matter most. And, one of the really important values I had to shift, like you, Terry, I used to, and Susan, I believe this is true for you too, really focus on helping others over myself. And I really had to take to heart, there's a reason they say put your own oxygen mask on first. And it felt selfish to me first to do that. But over time, I realized that was a major realignment to really valuing myself. And I can't help other people if I don't first help myself. So, over time, I've really tried to prioritize what I'm building and where I want to go and how I want my life to be different. And letting those other things that were piling up kind of diminish over time.
Nice.
And something you said, Katie, made me want to actually share something with our listeners. Sometimes, this concept of values might kind of feel vague, and you might be like, well, what are my values? And, you know, values contribute to our behaviors. And I think a really good exercise is if somebody observed you for a week, what would they say are your top values?
Oh,
Right? It's a lot
I
easier.
am still squirming through this conversation, ladies. I am squirming.
But think about it that way. I think it
That's a
becomes
great way. Yeah.
more objective, through your behaviors. What are the values you are communicating to people around you? Anyways, that's all I'll say about that.
No,
Oh, that
that's
was
beautiful because
beautiful.
if
Yeah,
we're suppressing those things that really matter to us, we're not living our life to the fullest. And
that's
we
right.
get one of those, and time flies.
Yeah. No, that was great. Oh, like I said, I'm itchy and squirmy and I know I need to do work here. Let me tell you.
Good, and so do we all, right? And that's how
Right.
I love, though, that you're paying attention to that squirminess, because oftentimes that's what that indicator like feels like, right? But that is the catalyst for change. So that's beautiful. And like Susan was saying, we haven't achieved, none of us have achieved this. It's something we
Yeah.
work on
Yeah.
every day, right?
Yeah. It's
Absolutely.
perfect. Love it.
So last episode, we talked a lot about different types of medicine and building a care team. And we just want to talk about support as an ingredient on our personal recipe card for healing. So who wants to dive into that, talking about building a care team? Or
Well,
whatever you call it, Terry.
Yeah, no, a health team, a health team.
Yes.
yes. I like to say that paternalistic medicine is over, where you are
Here,
told,
here.
yeah, you're told what to do and you go do it. And if you don't do it, then you're not a good patient. Like, that's not what's happening anymore. Patients are smart. They're reading. I mean, they have access to information. They're coming in with complex questions. They're using AI to have a conversation and say, like, what should I be asking my doctor at my next appointment? And they come in with those questions. And I actually love that. I think it's a really beautiful way to help this person move through whatever they're trying to make a decision on faster and feel more comfortable with their care. So, last week we talked about assembling a team of doctors and practitioners that round out your care. And, the therapeutic encounter matters. If there are people on your team that maybe you don't have positive thoughts and feelings about, maybe they don't belong on your team.
Mhm.
You should be very intentional about the people that you invite into your team, whether it's your doctors, psychologists, therapists, even health coaches, family, friends, other allied healthcare professionals. And so, I have doctors on my care team because I love their bedside manner, I go there and I feel good and I feel cared for. And there are other doctors who have no bedside manner, but I am there for their intellect. I want them to tell me what's the latest and greatest in what I'm trying to solve. So, be intentional about why and who you put on your team. And one thing I learned in my hospice training is that the patient is at the center of the care team, and everybody else is in a circle around that person, acting as consultants, offering advice. And the person in the center decides what they will take and what they will, let go of. So don't think about finding the perfect practitioners. You need to have people that are trusted, and then you need to kind of figure out what sits well with you and what doesn't. And how you feel when you are in conversation with a practitioner really matters too. If you're getting like a weird itchy feeling, your body's trying to tell you something. pay attention to those small signals that your body's sending you.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I couldn't have said it better myself. Ditto. How's that? I think um, people need to understand. We all need to understand that you have more power and say in your healthcare than you realize. And having a team where you can have open conversations, whether it's a neurologist or your family doctor or your naturopath or whomever, those those open conversations allow you to advocate for yourself, allow you to educate yourself in a very pointed way, and then you can get a sense of who you want to move towards and who you want to move away from. And you want to move towards those people that put the care in healthcare and not the toxic relationships that make you feel lesser than, you know? And might just be me, but to me, it's all about conversations. And it's not barging in there with, guns blazing, saying, okay, buddy, I want to know. It's about, help me understand this, learn how to speak to the different practitioners. Because there is still, a difference in how people communicate, and learning how to communicate will allow you to make decisions on your terms.
I love that you both are really encouraging people to pay attention to how a relationship feels.
Oh, yeah.
That's something I think that I was not good at in the beginning. I had so much respect for my doctors and their expertise that I would often yield to their expertise over what my own body was feeling. And, that's been a real transition to kind of learn to put myself at the center as you shared. And, one of the things that really helps me kind of determine how a relationship is do they feel like a fountain? Are they giving me life and joy? And am I happy? And am I looking forward to seeing them? Or do they feel like a drain? Is it a wah wah or, oh, I have to do, I should, all of those kind of negative emotions. And those are really indicators to us that maybe we're not on the right path for us. It might be the right path for someone else or for the physician, but not necessarily for us. And so I think really, tuning in to how these relationships feel, it's so easy to say, oh, that's so woo. And are you sure you're making the right decision? But that's, I think, how we know if it's the right decision for us.
Mm-hmm. Katie, can I just add something there? You said, I respected them so much that this is my paraphrasing, I just followed them unconditionally, so to speak. And I think, like we've all alluded to in this conversation, everything has changed. And at the top of that stack is the healthcare consumer. You, me, our patients, our friends, everybody has changed. Like we said, more intelligent, more resourced, that kind of stuff. So the respect is still there. It's just there in a different way. It's more of a collaborative respect than an authoritarian respect. It's more of the doctor is not the authoritarian, the doctor is the collaborator.
A partner
Love
in
that.
care. Yeah.
Partner, yeah, true partner in care. And I'll share a strategy I use now in case it's helpful for listeners. I think that when I'm trying to solve for something, I love to brainstorm in public. I like to get a lot of different opinions, a lot of different ideas, a lot of different experiences. But then when it comes time for that decision making, I'm forcing myself to do that in isolation so that I am making that decision for me. So I certainly do take into account all of the experts around me, but really, leaning in and making those decisions by myself. And that really ties into our next ingredient for healing, which is learning, right? And accessing information that's reliable and relevant. Like, how do we gain that confidence to really listen within? Part of that is learning. So let's talk about that a little bit.
I mean, yes to learning, very important to find the right information that is reliable, it's safe, There's maybe some evidence, data, or observation behind it. So building up that knowledge base is important. But I feel like a lot of people get stuck in what my husband calls analysis paralysis. Me too, right? It sometimes is easier to find comfort in diving into a bunch of information than actually making a decision and moving and taking action on it. So I find that to actually happen a lot with patients. They're just hustling to get more information. And sometimes the sources of the information are not great. It's an infomercial. Should I take this supplement? I learned about it on an infomercial. I think that would be the if it's on an infomercial, you probably shouldn't take it. I'm just going to say that. Like, I'm not going to say 100%, but pretty much that might hold true. So, I personally spent a lot of time learning. I had the privilege of going to conferences and learning from people in the field. And so people like me who are trained have actually put a lot of time and effort into the information. So seek out somebody that you trust and then just follow what they are asking you to do. Now, I'm not saying follow blindly, always question everything, but tune in and see how this information that they're asking you to take in and what they're asking you to act on feels like in your body, right? Tuning in and figuring out if it's right for you or not. Dr. Jacqueline, what about you?
Oh boy. Yeah. I mean, it's the analysis paralysis. Yes, I can relate to that. And right now it is probably the biggest obstacle to cure that's out there. And so people go for crazy things that are not individualized at all. And I won't mention some of them because I don't want to offend people, but it's not always a DIY job. Your healthcare is not always a DIY job. So use that information to inform, and then, like you said, have these intelligent collaborative conversations with, even if it's in an open forum, with other intelligent, informed people, because the key word for me is always relevant. You can have a stack of papers this high, but how much of that is relevant to you? And, healthcare, especially natural healthcare, is a $1 trillion business right now. And every monkey and his uncle is starting a supplement brand with very convincing marketing that you just can't live without. So people end up, I've had people bring me drawers full of supplements. I've had people bring me suitcases full of supplements. First of all, I think they must be millionaires. And then secondly, I say, why are you taking this? Oh, I don't know. I saw the infomercial. Right? So that's not learning. That's being duped. And looking at the bigger categories. So what are you hearing? I'm hearing a lot about diet. Diet's really important. Okay. What's the first layer of information you need to know? Stop eating. Maybe for you, it's stop eating ultra processed food. Or maybe it's stop eating ice cream. And I'm not joking. I've had people come to me that ate ice cream twice a day, every day. It might be don't drink that 2 for a beer every week. It might be something simple and then just continue to, build on that. But yeah, it's hard nowadays and it can be wildly overwhelming. KT, why don't you bring this home for us?
Yeah, well, as the educator in the bunch who is really addicted to learning, this is a big one for me. And I don't necessarily get in analysis paralysis, but I get in acquiring knowledge mode, and it is sometimes difficult for me to shift out of that. And as someone who has a scientific mind, I also like to test a lot of things and try to limit what I'm testing to one variable. And if I get too much information, sometimes that's difficult. But how do I know if something's really helping me if I don't keep it simple? So I like to really think of, and I have an educational colleague, Jennifer Abrams, that talks about stretching our learning edges. And so whatever I'm dealing with, whether it be a symptom or just something that, doesn't feel right, I really try to stretch those learning edges and find out all I can so that I can prepare before a doctor appointment. I have very clear objectives about what I want from an appointment, whereas I used to just go in as kind of a passive receiver, and go in and maybe ask a timid question about what was wrong with me. Whereas now, I prepare those questions ahead of time. And like I said, I have really clear objectives for how I want to leave the space. So I'm much more a driver of my care than a passive passenger anymore. And I'm still learning to be comfortable with stumping a doctor along the way. For example, I recently saw a pain management specialist, and I said I'd really like to explore non-pharmaceutical options first. And it was like crickets. They didn't know what to do with me. But I waited patiently, and we did leave that appointment with some options. It wasn't their first choice, but again, I made sure that I was clear on my values and some of the other things we've talked about, so that I left that appointment with my objectives met. So I think education and preparation, learning in that way, can really, really help us move the needle on our health.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Let's talk about mindset. This is such a big one.
God.
Yeah. I mean, I'd say mindset is everything.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
How you think about things influences your behaviors, your actions, your reactions, your interactions. It's really it guides your life in a very different direction based on what that mindset is. When I first got diagnosed, somehow I developed this mindset or belief that if I did everything I could in my power, I would be fine. Right. And what was fine, for me, it was like having mobility, being able to work, take care of myself, take care of my family. Right. And multiple sclerosis is an unpredictable disease. But I thought, well, what if I put a bunch of stuff in place and made things more predictable? What if that experiment would work in my favor? And so, as I was studying integrative medicine and learning new things, the belief was that I am going to do everything I can and I will be fine in the future. I will be fine with whatever the outcome is. And to this day, that guides me. And I try to do the best I can by putting into place the things in my environment that help me live that big life. And so that having that mindset that my body can heal itself was really important in achieving the health that I have today.
Yeah. And I, once again, I can just, your words are beautiful, and I can just build on them even further. Something that you said that really struck me just now is that, in our case, it's multiple sclerosis, whatever complex chronic illness is out there, is complicated and not predictable. And being okay with whatever happens means that you're still living your life. And what I talk to people about, living beyond the diagnosis, whatever it brings. And I just wanted to add to your beautiful list of mindset affects this, and this, and it affects your biochemistry, your physiology, your pathology, and your symptoms too. So it's not just about how you see the world, but how that translates physiologically is so real now. I mean, that's just something that we understand. And it's what you believe. And, who was it that said, whether you believe you can or you can't, you're right.
Absolutely.
And it's a huge topic, but I think it can be summarized in something as simple as that, you know? And that's why I freak out. I'll say I freak out when when I hear like Facebook groups called MS sucks, or some kind of self-deprecating title. I think, yeah, that's a really sad way to see the world. That's a really sad way to, that's a really sad thought to have driving your process for you.
Yeah.
Is, yeah. Now, educators, some listeners may know of Carol Dweck. She's kind of the guru of mindset, and she talks about, having a fixed mindset or a flexible or growth mindset. And I see that, like you're saying, Terry, folks that go to a MS sucks group, they're pretty fixated on how much it sucks, right? Whereas if we can remain, have this growth or this malleable mindset, and really keep the faith that whatever we come across in life, we will be able to find a way through it. Right. Not that we'll, be able to cure everything that we encounter, but that we have the faith and the belief in ourselves that we will be able to navigate that hardship. And I think, one of the things that Dr. Susan, you did with me early on was kind of look backwards in my life and find kind of some real hardships that I had traversed successfully before, and really taking time to see where I had been and how I had navigated these challenges really helped grow that belief in myself that, yeah, I live with this condition that's really unpredictable. But I think whatever comes my way, I will find my way. Will it be easy? No. But I trust that I can find my way through.
Yeah. And if you didn't have that mindset, you would be on a very different trajectory. I have no doubt.
Yeah, and I wanted to just mention another tool here that I found really helpful, and it's the post-traumatic growth inventory. It's like a little questionnaire if you like taking quizzes about yourself, but it's actually very scientific based. And this was an interesting tool I came across, and I realized, like, wow, a major diagnosis, that is a traumatic event in your life, and it took me a few years to actually acknowledge that was traumatic. But what's great about this tool is that it's really simple, and you come up with a score, and there's kind of these 5 categories in your life of ways to kind of move past that traumatic experience. And I was really surprised when I took it, and I wish I had taken it years ago, because my scores were pretty high in 4 of the 5 areas. And first of all, it made me go, oh wow, look how far I've come. But that 5th area also highlighted some areas for me to further explore. And for me, that was the connection between spirituality and health. And I know that's something we'll cover at some point. But, there are these tools out there that can help us really shift our mindset if we are stuck in a way of thinking that is not serving us. So what do you most want people to think about when they think about ingredients, and what makes it onto their card or not?
I want to say that healing is always possible, whether or not cure is. And if you can pull in more of the right ingredients, you will create an environment that'll support your healing. And that healing path is not linear. You're not going to walk a straight path and get to where you want to be. It's going to be messy, frustrating, challenging, but you got to keep getting back up and working on the next step. There's a lot of trial and error, and that's okay. That's how healing works.
A lot of trial and error, huh? I'm not sure I want to be in your kitchen.
I love a good experiment.
I totally get it though. Yeah. So what is the, I think once we understand that we don't have to work in isolation. We don't have to exist in isolation. It's about, you don't have to do it alone. You know what I mean? There are your health team that you want to build for sure, because remember, a complex chronic illness is not a DIY thing. And who you surround yourself with. What is the energy, what is the vibration, what is the feeling that you get from the people that you're hanging with. And I think that is I think that's a really important long-term ingredient for healing.
Great. Well, I have a few thoughts that are going to kind of lead us into our experiential piece for this time. And as always, the educator, some of you may know the term of an IEP, an individualized educational plan. And I really had to create kind of an ICP, an individualized care plan. And I think that just as we are each kind of putting together our own ingredient card, recipe card for healing, just to remember that our ingredients, our three of us, our ingredients are very, very different on our three cards, and it's going to look different for every single listener out there. But our health is our responsibility, and how we honor our lives by living into our values is really, really critical. And what I put on that recipe card is just as important as what I take off. And I think, one of the hardest words for me to learn was no, saying no to people. But it makes my yeses now mean so much more. So as we kind of do this next piece, I hope you kind of think about, what is going on to that card for you, but also what's coming off, so that there's room for those extra things you want to add to your card. So Terry, why don't you take us away with this exercise?
Okay. Okay. Well, I'm very, very obsessed, you might say, with connecting with the self and being still and listening. So this is going to be another one of those kind of exercises. And you can, our listeners, if you're not driving, you can close your eyes. You can settle in comfortably. And I want you, just as we go into this exercise, it's not super structured, but I want you to listen to your body, and I want you to think about the ingredients on your recipe card, so to speak, the ingredients for a happy life, the ingredients for living beyond your diagnosis. What is your body hungry for? Just take a deep breath. And is it hungry for a rest? Is it hungry for a laugh? Is it hungry for community? What is something that you would like to make sure that you've got more of in your life? What is your body thirsty for? What will quench that thirst for incessant knowledge and make you feel comfortable? Is it connection? Is it nature? What are the kind of ingredients that you want to include in your healing recipe? Chances are it might not be a cup full of supplements. Chances are it'll be something deeper than that, something more connective than that. And I want you to think about what is on your recipe card now. And what is kind of driving your healing journey, and how is that serving you? How is that serving you? Is it filling you up, or is it a glug glug? It's draining you away. And take the time to do this type of an exercise. Maybe every day, maybe every week, whenever suits you. And we can come back into the space again, and I just wanted to tie sort of those thoughts of that to a long-standing exercise called the Wheel of Life exercise. And it's a little bit complicated. We'll get into it another time, but it might not be a bad time to introduce it now. So I'm not going to get into it too much, but there is an app called Your Wheel of Life. And if you're curious, you can download that for free and start to see how the different elements of your wheel of life are serving you and how they're not, or where you need to do a little bit more work. So that is, I hope that was helpful, and I hope that gives you pause to reflect on all the elements of your healing journey.
Thank you, Terry. I have a few things that brought up that I can share.
Okay.
I definitely recognize that I'm really hungry for more sunlight and joy and adventure. I tend to get stuck in a rut, and often it's, work passion related. But I do miss exploring new places, and also music. So those were some things that I just really want to make sure are really prominent on
Mm.
that recipe card for me. And then, I realize I gotta take something off. And the biggest thing right now, I still waste too much time. I need to do a strategic digital detox. Um, and
Yes.
I just got a new phone, and in many ways, it's quite an upgrade. I hadn't gotten a phone in like 4 models, and so that's been great. But it's because I had to, reset everything and all of that. I really got off track, and I've been spending a lot more time on my phone. So
Mm.
that is something that is coming off my personal recipe card as a result. So thank you for that. It's a gift.
Nice. Susan, did you have
Yeah,
a
I know that I'm, like we talked about, it's easier to prioritize other people, whether it's family or patients. And what I'm really working on is doing what I actually need to do to take care of me first, and then attending to the work of others. So one thing about me is I hate schedules. I detest schedules and structure. And my husband's been trying to get me to get a calendar going for like 15 years now. I'm going to get a calendar. I think a person like me would do well with a calendar because I am all over the place and I get a lot done, but it's done in a haphazard manner. And so I want to be more structured and prioritize my care first. Like I'm going to put in that 8 to 9 a.m. slot is going to be exercise. So if I don't do it, then I just won't do it for the rest of the day. And speaking of a digital detox, I just took Instagram off my phone. I don't even like it, but somehow it sucks me in. And that's time that I could be resting or doing something joyful. And I am going to stop listening to the news. Um,
Mhm.
Again, I got off that habit the last 3 weeks, but I will be getting that off my routine as well. Yeah.
Nice.
Carrie, what about you?
I am love the digital detox, and I used to recommend a digital detox to people, and I think just in the current state of the world, it's very easy to get hooked into the news or bites of information on YouTube or whatever. So I think that is top of the stack because like Susan said, when you get rid of that, you've got all this time for other things. So that's my big one. Big time. Big, big, big time.
Great, great. Okay, well, listeners, we'd love to hear from you. What went onto your card? What is coming off of your card? Share with us on social media how things are going. And also share with us what you'd like to hear in upcoming episodes. We'd really love to hear what's most, what your body really wants us to talk about. Share this episode with someone that you think that can benefit, and check out our YouTube channel. And you can also email us at howdoctorsheal@gmail.com. So next time we're going to look at a more serious topic, and that is, what do we do when healing doesn't feel possible? I'm speaking for myself, but I know that I have been in that place many times. Have either of you been in that place where you feel like healing is not possible, you're at a dead end or whatever? And it's a very real place where we've all spent time in our own journeys, and we're going to talk about what can we do when we feel stuck, or we're plateauing, or we're struggling, or we're declining. And that'll be the conversation that we have next time. So we look forward to that and seeing you again. And until next time, stay curious, embrace change, and lean in to what's possible. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
The conversations in this podcast are to offer healing pathways you may not have considered. What you choose to do with this information is always a shared decision between you and your healthcare team. Please keep in mind that while we are doctors, we are not your doctors, and the views expressed are our own based based on our current understanding of health, medicine, and our lived experience. These views may not represent those of our employers or professional organizations. While we strive for accuracy, we acknowledge that science and medicine are always evolving. We are grateful to our friend Dr. Marla Avila, neuroimmunologist and recording artist, for the beautiful music featured in this episode. You can find more of her work on Spotify.